WWDC, Apple Mac OS 10 gets a new name. Is it Sea Lion? And as well, all the E3 news from Microsoft and Sony. All of this and more coming up today on Tech Pulse. All right, this is Tech Pulse for June 11th, 2013. Is it June 11th already? I mean, it's just like time goes by quick when you're talking about the tech world. Well, this is Tech Pulse, the place where you get all the news about everything going on in the tech world. We give it to you right here as it happens. And we're going to talk about, first off, we want to get to E3 because a lot of news happened yesterday on E3. But we want to talk about, right now, starting off, we want to talk about WWDC. What did Apple, bring to the table? I mean, because a lot of you couldn't watch both. You couldn't watch WWDC and watch Microsoft because they happened within minutes of each other. So while the Xbox press conference was going on, Tim Cook took the stage at WWDC. Now, if you remember, WWDC was sold out. Now, it's a developers conference, so it's not for the consumer yet. It's really for the developers so they can know how to develop apps and stuff like that, which you obviously will be benefiting from because you're the ones that's going to use the programs and use the things developed by Apple. So Tim Cook started off the show, and it sold out. I mean, Devin, this thing sold out in 72 seconds, WWDC, and the price of each ticket, $1,500. I mean, does that just show you Apple's pull in the market? I mean, $1,500 per ticket. Yeah, and we're talking thousands of seats in there. And that thing sold out in 71 seconds.
I'm just waiting for the people to wake up. I don't get it. I mean, I applaud them for being able to pull the people.
Right.
I just don't understand.
You just don't understand why, yeah.
I don't get it.
And the thing is, as you say that, I'm watching the conference yesterday, right? WWDC. And everything that this guy mentions, he's like, and we're going to give you new calendars. Woo! And I'm like, what are you clapping for? He just said calendar. You know what I'm saying? And then he said, and we're going to get an upgrade to Siri. Woo! And I'm like, but you don't know what it is yet.
I believe 100% that those people drank the water at the Apple Store. All the people, they've been drinking the same food. That's it.
It has to, because, yeah, I mean, and some of the things, don't get me wrong, some of the things Apple announced was good.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff was just upgrade, like minor things that they should have had already. They're catching up now, as opposed to being the leaders. The things that they mentioned is things that's like, man, they should have already had that. And people are like, whoa, and I'm like, what are you guys doing, But that's the mystique with Apple. People just, I don't know, like you say, I don't know what it is where Apple can come out with these incremental upgrades, and people treat it like it's brand new, state of the art. But this is what Apple was all about. But let me just run down some of the facts. But go ahead.
Before you go there, I think the call moment for me, the waking up moment when I said yes, I was right, was when Max, Max,
right,
when his wife didn't buy an Apple,
right, iPhone, and
and
they're diehard iPhone people.
Diehard.
Yeah.
And it just made sense.
And what did she get instead?
A Samsung, a Galaxy or something.
So there you go.
Some other.
Right. Android. That's the bottom line.
She got an Android.
Right.
Yeah.
Which shows that Android is, if not as good, better than Apple right now. Apple is not. They're not head and shoulders above like they used to be. You know what I'm saying? Right now they're at best just along the. They're just as good as everyone else around them. But the fanboys will tell you otherwise. The fanboys will tell you, nah, man, Apple is still at the top of the heap. And like I said, a lot of the things they announced yesterday was just incremental upgrades, things they should have had already, and you don't know why they didn't do it. but things they show. I mean, they talked about, and we're going to get to it, but they talked about their Apple Maps. And the guy was like, if you look at it now, we have 3D. He's showing the 3D rendering buildings. I'm like, but Google has that already. They already have. And he says, and he's like, and right now, the maps can give you, if let's say you want to know a restaurant, you can find a restaurant. It's like, but how is that different than what Google does now? I mean, the things he was saying, and then there was one commentator that said something funny when, in the conference. One of the commentators who were covering the event, they said as they were listening, and when he was talking about Google Maps, he goes, Tim Cook, not Tim Cook, the guy who he had out there for the Google Maps, he was saying, and this is my favorite feature of the new Google Maps. And as he said it, like I said, this is my favorite feature, the commentator goes, accuracy. Not Google Maps, Apple Maps. This is my favorite feature of the new Apple Maps, accuracy. Yeah. But it's true. Apple's maps, it's not, and that's one of the reasons why people in the iOS store still use Google Maps instead, of Apple. And this is why when they said those things, these are not things that's like are revolutionary. These are things that they should have had already, but didn't. You see. But let's run down some of the things they were talking about. Now, Tim Cook got on stage. First off, the guy looked like he just ran from his car. You know what I'm saying? Because his head was shiny. And I'm saying, you're on a live stream. You don't know that, cameras are going to be on you. This guy was just glistening. It's like, he just, like they told him, because the Apple conference started late, right?
That's why That's why Ford lost the election, right? He looked disheveled.
He looked the guy came in there, they started about 5 minutes, which is on par for Apple. They never start their conferences on time anyway. But this time it looked like he was in his parking lot. They were saying, "Hey, Tim, 5 seconds, man." Yeah, and he just had to run in there. And then the front of the conference floor is full of Apple employees. Anyway, they normally stuff the front seats with their employees and things like that because it's a developers conference. It's not open to the general public. But he started off by talking about how Apple, they had 1,000 engineers there at the conference so that people could, developers could bounce their feedback off of Apple engineers. They also had set up 120 workshops so that the developers could actually embed their code into the new Apple products that they had out there and try it and do different things like that. Tim Cook said that Apple Store had downloaded, or people had downloaded 50 billion apps to date since they opened up in 2008 or whatever it was. People have downloaded 50 billion apps. They say the App Store is in its 5th year, the App Store, and 50 billion apps have been downloaded since. He says right now that Apple has 900,000 apps in their App Store. Now, this is how he started the conference, just listing off, the accolades of Apple. He said that in the 900,000 apps, he says 93% of those apps are downloaded every month. So 93% of their 900,000 apps are downloaded every month. They're not a bunch of repeat apps. In other words, he's saying out of the 900,000, every month, 93% of that, so about 800 and 50-something thousand is downloaded every month. They're saying that's how useful their app store is. They also talked about this new store that they opened in Berlin. And they showed it. I mean, that thing it didn't look like an app store. It was like in this big cathedral, and they had like desks everywhere, like these futuristic type clean Art Deco square wooden desk with stools, and it had all the various Apple products on it. iMacs. It had MacBook Pros, Airs, iPads, all of that stuff all over it. And you see all the Apple employees, and people go in and they can talk and they can do different things. And they're saying that's an experience that Apple is bringing that no one else is bringing. They say that they have 375,000 iPad apps just for the iPad. 575 million store accounts is what he said. They have 575 million store accounts right now. So they're talking that they have over 500 million people actively signed up using Apple's iStore and iTunes and stuff like that. And they have paid out They're letting the developers know they have paid out, according to Tim Cook, over $10 billion to developers. And right when he said it, the developers were like, woo! They started clapping. But you have to remember, this is since Apple has been open, not the App Store, Apple period. So $10 billion is a lot, yes. But, over the course of Apple, since they've been open, you know what I'm saying? They have to pay the developers something, So they're saying that $10 billion they paid the developers. And that's how basically Tim Cook started off the press conference, just listing how great Apple is. Basically is all he was trying to say. I don't know why, because if people have spent $1,500 to get into a conference in under 71 seconds, you don't need to convince them anymore. You know what I'm saying? That your product is what they want, because clearly it must be. If I was on the fence about Apple, I'm not going to spend $1,500 for a ticket, because there were no cheap tickets. They didn't have $1,500 is front row, and then for $50 you could be in the nosebleed seats. No, every seat in the house was $1,500. You see, and Apple sold that thing out in 71 seconds. So to me, it was kind of a bit pretentious to start off your press conference to a bunch of developers that obviously want to be there, letting them know all the accolades like that. Now, maybe in business this is a strategy. I don't know, Devin. Is that a strategy when you bring new people on board or something like that, that want to be there? Because clearly, if they're paying $1,500, it's not like if you're looking to get a client to invest in your bank, maybe they don't want to be there. But if you have a conference and everybody paid big money to be there, do you think you need to spend so much time saying how great your bank is? Clearly, they must know why they're paying that $1,500. It's not $10, $1,500 to get in there. So what do you think Apple or Tim Cook was trying to do by just listing up accolade after accolade after accolade to start the show?
They weren't talking to the people in the audience. They were talking to people who were watching outside. That's basically what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when I don't have anything to sell you,
right,
interesting new, I talk about what I am,
right,
and what I think I mean to you,
right.
So I don't have to captivate you into what I can promise you.
Right.
I just talk about how big I am, how wonderful I am,
and how glad you should be to be a part,
to be in my company. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's really bragging, or trying to brag. And
that's what I took it as.
It doesn't come over well.
Yeah, because I could see you saying one or two things, but he went on and on about just everything. That we have 900,000 apps, 93% are downloaded monthly. And some of those things were interesting facts, but after a while, when you started just talking about the billions of accounts you have and the 50 billion downloads and this and that, I'm like, okay, we got it. Just start the conference already. Enough. So finally, they started the conference, and they started with a new technology that they were calling Anki. Anki, A-N-K-I is what they call it. They have a team of who developed this software program along with robotics. And it was one of the things why I thought it was cool, because at first, they had their little snafus and stuff like that, and it wasn't working the way they thought, and there was a lot of pausing on stage, and everyone was like, oh, this is why you don't do stuff live, because it wasn't working the way. But once they got it working, I thought it was pretty impressive right off, and we're going to talk more about that coming up after the break. What Apple did with their Anki, they call it Anki Drive and robotics. They're saying this is a sample of what the new Apple is going to be a part of. So it's kind of giving us a thought process into where Apple is headed in this thing. So coming up after the break, we're going to talk about this Anki software that Apple came up with right here on Tech Pulse. So stay tuned.